This is a video that I am recording in the dark, and it's one in which I'm going to do some assassinology. I'm thinking about the age of assassins, the time span in which assassinations and attempted assassinations of public figures became very much a thing, became a rather common thing, considerable. I mean, comparatively speaking. And this time was between the years 1963 and 1981. I'm talking about in the United States. I can't speak for anywhere else in the world. I don't know enough about assassinations of public figures in other countries. I, if I might, if I shake myself down, shake my brain down, I might recall certain uh, assassinations that happened to people in other countries, but I am most focused on recent American history, and it's very peculiar that for a period of almost 2 decades, it became a real, as I said, not common in the sense that it just happened every day. Every time you turn around, there's another public assassination or public assassination attempt. But compared to before and compared to after, compared to 1982 onwards, it seemed that this period of time was really, shall I say, rich with assassinations and assassination attempts. They didn't all succeed. They didn't succeed. They didn't all succeed in killing the object of the assassination attempt. Nevertheless, since then, since 1982, in the United States, as far as I know, as far as what I'm trying to remember, there have been no public assassination attempts, even that I can think of, that I am aware of. And that's damn peculiar. Why did it all end in 1981? If it did, unless I'm forgetting some people. If I'm forgetting some people, if there were incidences that took place after 1981, I'm pretty sure they were all more local level, less conspicuous types. So you had, to wit, the following assassinations of public figures taking place between 63 and 81. You had JFK, of course, the very first one. You had RFK. You had Martin Luther King, MLK, which I'm going to come back to because that's the one that to me seems not to fit the mold. And I will come back to that one. But anyway, those are the ones that are often talked about as the big three, taking place in a very short period of time between 63 and I think 68, 5 years. And then you had Malcolm X. He was maybe not as prominent a public figure. He's still very prominent, and he was assassinated at around that same time. Forgive me, I don't know the year right now, although I can look it up. You can look it up, but I know it was around that same period of time. You had George Wallace, who was not assassinated but was maimed, was paralyzed for life after he was shot in 1972, I believe. And then you had, this is one I had forgotten about before, and this is not an American assassination, but it's still a highly, highly prominent assassination attempt, Pope John Paul II. Now, I know that people ask what happened to Pope John Paul I, and there are lots of people who have died under strange circumstances that might have been murder, like Pope John Paul I or Kurt Cobain or others, but I'm not including people like that here. I'm talking about public assassinations, where these people were shot or shot at in public. So Pope John Paul II, will include him, even though that was in Vatican City, that was in Italy, but still, we'll give him an honorary mention. He'll be an honorary American for this, for my purposes here. And then you had Ronald Reagan in 1981, and he was the last. His assassination attempt, which also failed, but did hurt him pretty bad and almost killed him. He came much closer to dying than people really knew at the time. His assassination attempt was what signaled the end, basically the end of the assassination era in the United States. So, and of course, this is what first brought this all to mind, John Lennon, which the assassination of John Lennon occurred in late 1980, just a few months before the attempt on Reagan's life, which I think maybe was in March of 81. Of course, I'd forgotten to include that one, but it was actually consideration of John Lennon in that last video of mine and what he said about the so-called problem of overpopulation, and how what he said in that interview with Dick Cavett, who is obviously, who's a high-level network talk show figure, so somebody who was obviously placed into a position of media prominence, who was towing the line, who told him he didn't agree with him, who told Lennon that he thought he was wrong in saying that overpopulation wasn't really a problem. Lennon responded, "Oh, I don't care," which was funny, which was a nice retort. Okay, so all of these assassinations and assassination attempts, I mean, most of them were carried out by people who were, in the conspiracy world, they call them the lone nut characters, these sort of crazy guys, these guys who live on the margins and are just kind of mentally out there, or not all there, or just kind of weird and antisocial. Some of them maybe, may seem insane or schizophrenic, and others just seem like just kind of out there and different and as I said, antisocial, not the kind of people who have a lot of friends or associates and who just seem to be drifting on the margins of society. And most, I think, assassinologists would conclude that in all of these cases, it's at least suspicious. In all of these cases, it's and this is not going to be the focus of my discussion right now, but it is thought that you look a little harder at these crazy, lonely, nutty men who carried out these assassinations, or allegedly did. I guess in some cases there's some question about whether they were the triggermen or not. Especially the two Kennedy murders. That seems to be the case, where the person they arrested and charged with the assassination, could very well not have even fired the shot that killed the person in question. But something that there's a pattern that fits all of these assassinations, except one. Now, I shouldn't have included Pope John Paul II because I don't know enough about the alleged motivation of the shooter in that case. I know that he was alleged to have communist ties, but I don't know enough to be able to speak of that case. So put Pope John Paul to the side there. No disrespect meant. He didn't really belong in this list anyway, except that his assassination attempt took place within the parameters of the assassination, the 18 years of time, the time period in which assassinations became a much more common thing in the United States, which John Paul didn't happen in the United States. So, anyhow, what do all of these the men who were assassinated in all of these cases, what do they have in common? Well, everyone but one, it seems, were trying to buck the designs of those more powerful than they. Trying to buck the designs of those who placed them into their powerful positions in the first place. Or who were perceived as being unreliable in carrying out the plan of the elites, for lack of a better word. Starting with JFK, of course. JFK wanted to smash the CIA. He wanted it to shatter it into thousands of pieces. He wanted to end the CIA. He felt that they had embarrassed him with the what happened with the Bay of Pigs invasion in Cuba. He thought that they were dangerous. He spoke out against secret societies in a famous speech. So it's much more and it seemed that he didn't necessarily want to expand into Vietnam, and it seemed like it was the designs of the elites of the military-industrial complex to get more entrenched in Vietnam and in foreign wars generally, you know, to push into other countries and assassinate leaders and do all the kind of stuff that the CIA is infamous for doing. So that's why JFK had to go. RFK, and by the way, I don't buy into the idea that the Kennedy brothers were great, wonderful people in and of themselves. They probably did a lot of bad things too, but I do think that they ran afoul of the of their would-be puppet masters, and they had to be taken out. Well, RFK wanted to get out of Vietnam. That was enough for them to try to take him out, and they did. George Wallace, well, he was fucking everything up. He was, Southern populist. He was dividing the vote. He was taking votes away from the main candidates, and the powers that be don't like when their power is siphoned away, when somebody comes along and siphons away their what they believe to be rightfully theirs. And they didn't like Wallace, and Wallace was kind of a racist, kind of a segregationist, or spoke in favor of, or at the very least, just was a defender of the South, and the powers that be wanted. They it's not that they liked black people, as I'm going to talk about in a minute, but I do think that forced integration was the model that they were pushing for, was the model that they wanted to see happen. And, racial separatism was very much not what they wanted to see happen. And people of a particular race just opting to live in their own communities. They didn't want that. That wasn't part of the plan. The plan was has always been to mix everybody together by force, more or less. I think people should voluntarily be able to associate with whomever they want to. But I don't think integration was ever really about. I don't think the push for integration was ever really about letting people choose. I know this is getting on some dicey ground, but I'm saying for anybody. I'm saying for blacks, for whites, for anybody. I think there's a deeper agenda behind it, which is pushing multiculturalism, which tends to weaken the overall culture. But that's biting off a bit more than I can chew. Let's just say that somebody like George Wallace was hated by the elite in the same sense that someone like Malcolm X was hated. Malcolm X was contrary to Martin Luther King's pushing of integration. And, separate but equal was not working. It was not fair. It was not just. I'm not saying that it was. But Malcolm X and his allies, the people who were on his side, they were not. They weren't big fans of integration. They were black nationalists, again, black separatists. They wanted blacks to live apart in their own intentional communities, where they were accountable to one another, and where they were not going to be undermined by those who would make them pawns in the globalist chess match. And when you compare and contrast Malcolm X and MLK, just on a personal level, MLK was frankly a degenerate, and that's well known. It's controversial to talk about it because he's this plaster saint now, but he was a degenerate. He was a serial womanizer who seemed to enjoy perverse practices. Not only was he somebody who was unfaithful to his wife, but seemed to have perverse and degenerate proclivities. Malcolm X was a family man. Malcolm X was a faithful husband and father. And we know the powers that be love degeneracy and hate traditional decency and morality and virtue. So of course they would push MLK over Malcolm X. Now the question that this raises in my mind is why did they take out MLK? It seems to me that I know he wasn't popular in various parts of the country, especially the South at the time, and he was certainly a controversial figure, but as far as having the fawning admiration of the establishment, it seems that he had it. Go back and read an issue of Time magazine. Very interesting. If you look at old issues of Time and Time Life, and it was the conglomeration. Was that the Hearst company, or was that somebody else? I don't know. I remember going to a used bookstore and purchasing some old issues of Time and Life. Actually, it was Life. It was just Life magazine, but Time and Life are the same part of the same conglomerate. And basically, you can see there what the designs are of those in charge. You can see what they were pushing even back then, what they were advocating for, what they were the ideas they were trying to seed into people's minds. It's very much a propaganda rag. done sophisticatedly with some good writing, but it was not an independent entity. It was something that was propped up um, by official authorities, official sources, establishment money, and they adored Martin Luther King. They adored him. And I'm not saying that things that he did uh, weren't courageous or weren't, and that you know there wasn't. I'm not saying there wasn't something noble to the civil rights effort, at least in the early days. But what I am saying is, it does seem to me that Martin Luther King was the darling of the establishment. I guess he had people who didn't like him. I guess Herbert Hoover didn't like him, and there were others who didn't. I guess you could say he had certain powerful people, uh, like in the FBI, the ones who were wiretapping him and so forth. But it seems to me that and you talk about eugenics. Again, this is a bit of a ramble, but what really struck me about that John Lennon interview on Dick Cavett show was, Lennon clearly had no interest in, and clearly was opposed to eugenics. And that really, for anyone who wonders whether he was, anybody who thinks about the way the Beatles came to prominence and think that they were just a Tavistock creation, and how Aleister Crowley is one of the featured people on the Sgt. Pepper album, and I just kind of think that the Beatles were just serving this higher, this serving their masters in that it was all like a kind of again a culture creation sort of effort. And Beatlemania was. I mean, there may be some truth to that. I mean, there probably is some truth to that. But I would say that seeing Lennon in the 70s talking about how he thinks overpopulation is ridiculous, that causes me to think that he was off the wagon at that point. And I think he said he was quoted as saying the world is run by insane people at some point. He had some time when he said something like that. So, like him or not, and none of these people are like heroes or villains. They're all flawed people. Some good things about them, some bad things about them. But it would seem that he was off the wagon at that point. Of course, he was anti-war. The powers that be wanted war. They wanted integration at home, and they wanted war abroad. It seems to me those two things going hand in glove. And Martin Luther King, in addition to being a degenerate, he was an advocate of Planned Parenthood. People don't know this, but he supported Planned Parenthood. And he, even at the time, Planned Parenthood was pretty obviously very a racist organization, uh, and secretly we're talking about the Negro problem and the need to go and contracept, uh, encourage blacks to contracept so that they won't uh, we won't be overrun with these feral little pickaninnies. I mean, this is the I'm putting all that in quotes. This is like the mentality. This is the Planned Parenthood mentality, and uh, King was on board with it. So he supported Planned Parenthood, which indicates that he was down with eugenics, even though it obviously had a certain racist bent. Obviously, eugenics, the eugenicists, the powerful people who are eugenicists are not friendly towards people of any race but their own. They're not friendly towards any kind of people except their own bloodlines. And, while they might appear at times to be anti-black and other times to be anti-white, they're it's the same agenda. They're just pushing rhetoric out there that's advantageous to them at a particular time. So anyway, it's clear that why Lenin was not on the side of the elites, and as far as Reagan goes, he was also seen as somebody who was unreliable. And of course, Bush Sr. was the vice president. Bush Sr., who was the head of the CIA, Bush Sr., this is like, the very heart of the Bush family, is the very heart of the evil deep state, the intelligence services, that they were the true blue establishment types. And so, of course, Reagan's would-be assassin was a family member, was the son of somebody who was a prominent oil family who knew the Bushes. We haven't really heard that much about John Hinckley. There hasn't been enough revisionist sort of commentary about John Hinckley. We hear a lot about Mark David Chapman, John Lennon's assassin. We don't hear nearly as much about John Hinckley, but the two of them, and Sirhan, the killer of RFK, and I can't remember the guy's name, but whoever it was who shot George Wallace and failed to kill him, but succeeded at maiming and paralyzing him. All of these guys were just, very much like they are. You look at them, you look at their profiles, and these are MK Ultra. These are the types of men who you look at and you think they fit the MK Ultra profile. They disassociate. They commit these acts of extreme violence, and then they seem to be just in this disassociated state afterwards, where they hardly seem to know what happened or why it happened. And they have dubious histories, dubious backstories. I know that this can be said for a lot of these types of, these assassins or these alleged assassins. And so I think it's very hard to maintain that. Maybe it could be true of one or two of them. I don't know. But it's very hard to maintain that you had all of these assassinations taking place, all these public murders of, high profile people in the public eye, and yet, they were just all of these weirdos who were just squeaking through, watching Taxi Driver 85 times and obsessing over Jodie Foster, or, I don't know, doing other weird stuff that implies some state of disassociation. And, some people are just schizophrenic. Some people just, it's a natural, it's something that happens to them. Their brain chemistry is just off. But I think one can very easily infer that these assassins were messed with. And, wound up doing something because it was their bidding. They were doing somebody else's bidding. Now, the same could be true for whoever killed Martin Luther King. But here's the thing about Martin Luther King that again, for me, has me scratching my head a little bit. And that's this. This is something maybe some of y'all could help me with. Whatever you think of, if you've made it this far into my ramblings here, my ramblings in the dark about assassinations. It seemed to me that MLK, even though he had enemies, that he was mostly liked and mostly protected by the powerful types of people. It seems most of them were very fond of him and saw him as the guy who was going to help push through this major operation of integrating the southern states. And yet, somehow he ran afoul of them. He ran afoul of this group. He must have. Otherwise, how did he end up dead? How did he end up assassinated? In his case, he was allegedly killed by this sort of edgy drifter type James Earl Ray. And of course the story that they give us for why James Earl Ray did it is he was just this this angry racist redneck who just wanted to take out Martin Luther King because he didn't like how he was pushing for civil rights and so forth. But the history, the background of James Earl Ray is just as weird and just as questionable as that of most of these other most of these other men. In his case, it seems that he was more of a, I don't know, more of a Lee Harvey Oswald style patsy. Maybe somebody who had connections and who was working for intelligence on some level, but then they decided to make him the scapegoat for their entire operation. But MLK was pro-eugenics. MLK was pushing for the integration model, which is what I believe the advocates or the elites were also in favor of for their own purposes. They were not in favor of separatism. They did not like someone like Malcolm X, particularly, after Malcolm X kind of got out of the Nation of Islam ghetto, if you will, and became, a regular, not just a part of this weirdo sect, but became a Muslim, and just came to see that white people weren't of the devil, weren't created by an evil mad scientist like in the kooky Nation of Islam theology. That's where white people come from. There's this creation of some infernal mad scientist in the next life or in the other world, and they don't have any souls. The white people don't have any souls. Everybody else has souls. Everybody else has humanity, but white people don't. This is Nation of Islam theology. This is what, when you hear Elijah Muhammad or Louis Farrakhan, these are the kinds of theologies that they represent. So when Malcolm X was a part of that, he kind of was safely ghettoized. But then when he got out of the Nation of Islam and became this independent figure who had an appeal to not just to blacks, but to people of all races, who wanted to see justice and harmony prevail, that's when he became much more dangerous. But MLK was always very, on board with integration, and he was on board with eugenics. So what did he do? What did he do that made them turn against him? That made them decide to stop promoting him, and in fact to kill him? Because it seemed to me that he was, like, again, he was designed to be the spearheader of, the New South that was going to be socially engineered, in the 60s and 70s, according to the designs of his betters. The ones he was allied with, the ones who were funding his efforts, the ones whose interests he was representing. But he must have gone off the wagon in some way to make them decide, nah, we don't want him anymore. Take him out. Kill the guy. Even though he's a eugenicist and a degenerate. So you'd think he'd be just their type of guy. Because that's exactly what all of these people are, or what they seem to be, eugenicist degenerates. So MLK seemed to be birds of a feather with them, but yet they took him out. And so my big question is why? Why did that happen? It's the one piece to the puzzle that doesn't fit. I can understand why everybody else who they either assassinated or attempted to assassinate. And again, I originally included John Paul II, but I'm not including him anymore because that's a whole different milieu. I'm sure there's all kinds of things that can be said about his attempted assassination as well. But within the strictly American context, it makes sense that all these other men who were assassinated all ran afoul of the would-be social engineers and cultural architects. Oops. Sorry. Didn't mean to make that happen. Forgot you could see me. Just had to plug the thing in. So that all makes sense for everybody else except for King. In King's case, I don't get it. I just don't get it. Anybody? Bueller? Let me know. Thanks for sitting through this. Thanks for watching. Battery is low. I better get going. Bye.